It makes no sense to expel talented young people who, for all intents and purposes, are Americans. They've been raised as Americans, understand themselves to be part of this country.
President Obama announces a new policy regarding young illegal immigrants. I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, we have reaction from a young San Diegan affected by the change.
I'm Joanne Farian. At the roundtable, a San Diego immigrant rights activist tells us how San Diegans will be impacted by the president's announcement. And the movement to shut down a nuclear power plant in the county is gaining steam. And the latest on creep versus PED.
Also tonight, a place to house young military veterans hits a snag in a San Diego neighborhood. And a foodie favorite is about to become illegal in California, but animal rights activists say banning foie gras is just the beginning of this food fight. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. The U.S. is changing its immigration policy regarding younger illegal immigrants. Instead of being deported, President Obama is giving them a chance to get work permits.
Let's be clear. This is not amnesty. This is not immunity. This is not a path to citizenship. It's not a permanent fix. This is a temporary stopgap measure that lets us focus our resources wisely while giving a degree of relief and hope to talented, driven, patriotic young people.
The new policy is specifically for people brought to the U.S. as children. They have to have been under 16 when they arrived and no older than 30 currently. Those eligible must have lived here continuously for at least 5 years. Applicants also have to be in school or graduated or gotten a GED. Young immigrants honorably discharged from the service are also eligible. It's estimated the policy will affect 800,000 people who came to the U.S. as children. Nidia Ramirez is one of them. The Escondido woman's parents brought her here when she was 2 years old. She's now 25, a graduate student at San Diego State University. She talked with KPBS Fronteras reporter Adrian Florido after the president's announcement today.
How did you find out this morning about the Obama administration's decision to grant administrative relief?
I got text messages from my friends in the morning, so I was still sleeping, and I woke up and to like a text message like breaking news.
What was your first reaction?
My first reaction is always to be a little suspicious, like, is this true? Is this real? And I'm definitely excited. I think it, not just for me, but for many other dreamers, it's going to open a lot of doors and provide opportunities not just for us, but for the entire community.
So right now you're studying at San Diego State. What are you studying?
Studying marriage and family therapy.
And so before this morning, what were you planning on doing once you graduated?
I need to accumulate my hours to get my license as a marriage and family therapist.
But could you legally work as a marriage and family therapist?
I don't know, but something could change one day, and I feel like I have to stay constantly thinking about that I'm working towards this goal. And like last night, I had no idea that this was going to happen, that we were going to have administrative relief today, and today I woke up, and all of a sudden there's this opportunity.
Do you often get emotional about your immigration status?
Yeah, I do, because it's something very personal. To other people, it might just be legislation, but to me, it means my life.
So when people say, oh, this was just a shrewd political move on Obama's part, what do you say to that?
I feel like at the end of the day, so many of us have been here fighting for this, risking our lives in the only place that we know as home. And so this is also about us, at the same time that they're talking about Obama and his political strategy, this is also about our life here and what that means to our communities and what that means to our future.
What did your parents say when you told them about it this morning?
My mom is at work, so she actually texted me earlier and said, "Does this mean that this applies for you?" But I know that my parents are very excited because, I mean, one of the main reasons that they came here is so that we could have a better life, so that we could have better opportunities. And so, to me, I always think about it like my life is a product of their sacrifices and all their hard work. So I know that whatever it is that I can benefit from, like, they'll be so happy for me, and I feel good to make them proud in that sense.
The new policy is drawing criticism as well. Opponents say it's an election stunt to pander to Latino voters. Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney says it will make it harder to solve the country's larger immigration problems, but he hasn't said whether he would reverse the decision if elected. San Diego Congressman Brian Bilbray says he's extremely disappointed by the new policy and says it may be illegal. In a written statement, Bilbray calls it, quote, yet another backdoor amnesty policy. He says this mixed message will only encourage more illegal immigration and contribute to more deaths along the border. Bilbray has agreed to talk about this topic from Washington on Monday's Evening Edition.
Joining me to talk about how this new policy will begin impacting San Diegans immediately is Nidia Ramirez, longtime San Diego immigrant rights activist and human rights director of Equality Alliance. Thanks for being here, Nidia.
Joanna, pleasure.
We've already heard the story of one young woman from Escondido. Do we know how many young people here in San Diego County this new policy will impact?
Well, we know there's about 1 million undocumented students in the United States who will benefit from this new policy of enforcing immigration laws in the United States. I don't know exactly how many folks in the county will benefit from this, but what we do know is that it's a very urgently needed policy change in our country. We need to make sure that these folks who are contributing to our nation, who are going to be the future doctors, the future lawyers, the future teachers, are able to stay in the United States, and that's exactly what this policy will help do.
Did this come as a surprise?
No, it didn't. I've seen a very courageous movement by college students, undocumented men and women who have put everything out there, who have sacrificed their careers, their livelihoods, the possibility of remaining the only country that they know, the United States. And I've seen how they've impacted policy, how they've changed the discourse on this issue. Just next week, Time Magazine will have in the front cover the issue of the immigration students, undocumented students. So I think that this is a wonderful showing of how young people who are really willing to stand for justice are doing so, and this is that exact representation.
Of course, there is opposition already to this policy, as we just saw a moment ago. Congressman Brian Bilbray, he's had this to say: the timing of this announcement is politically motivated, and the policy is possibly in violation of the law. Is this politically motivated?
Well, listen, we're in the middle of a contentious election cycle. Everything that the president does is politically motivated. Everything that the Republicans do is politically motivated. This is a charged issue. The president is showing leadership by standing strong on this issue. But we have to be clear. This is not amnesty. This is not a solution. This is just a small step in the right direction, and everything that the president does is going to be viewed as a politically charged. Obviously it is. Obviously he's courting the Latino vote.
Now, this is an administrative change, not an act of Congress, which means a new president in November or next year could change, could actually reverse this. Does that worry you?
And that is our concern. What we need, what we have demanded from the president is comprehensive immigration reform. We've demanded that from our leaders in Congress. Now, because Congress is not acting, it's not being responsive, both parties are not being responsive to this issue, the president's taking some leadership here. But clearly this is not the solution. This is not in any way going to resolve the threat of deportation for millions of people who live in this country. But this is a step in the right direction. And what we need is a solution. And that solution can only come through Congress, and we're urging members of Congress to do the right thing on this issue.
Almost at the same time the president made this announcement came the opposition, and in particular during the news conference, I don't know if you saw this morning, at first he was called a heckler. Turns out he was a journalist for a conservative website, and he shouted out the question, Mr. President, how can you do this when unemployment is so high? Is this a fair question, this concern over now a number of undocumented immigrants will now have work permits, and he's asking, what about unemployment?
Well, the fact of the matter is that the folks that we're talking about here are folks who are excellent students. are folks who have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, PhDs. This is the future generation. These are folks who are unemployed because they don't have the right documents to work in this country. Let's give them an opportunity to excel. Let's give them an opportunity to contribute to our country, and that's exactly what the president is trying to do. This is not a perfect scenario for the president or for any one of us, but this is a step in the right direction, and we're pleased by the president's announcement.
You're also going to have opposition people who say, look, there are a number of immigrants who come here through legal channels. Isn't this just a shortcut?
We're not short. The only thing that we're shortcutting here is the future of the United States by not allowing folks who have graduated from college to give back to society, to give back to their communities. Let's allow young men and women who have demonstrated beyond any reasonable doubt that they're excellent scholars the opportunity to contribute back, to give back.
We don't have a lot of time, Christian, but before we go, we're expecting the Supreme Court to rule on the Arizona law, the SB 1070. Do you think that this now puts the president ahead of that conversation?
Well, absolutely. I think the president is trying to get ahead of this issue. I think the president is trying to show leadership in this issue. Some say it's come too late. And for at least 1 million people that the president has deported, it is too late, this policy. But we hope that this is a new way of having a conversation about a very divisive issue that's important to resolve immediately in the United States.
Christian Ramirez, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
In other news tonight, San Diego's unemployment rate held steady last month. It was 8.8%, the same as April. It's down a full point from May last year. And unemployment in the county is at its lowest level in 2 years. California lawmakers beat their midnight deadline to pass a new state budget. Now the question is whether Governor Jerry Brown will sign it. It has fewer welfare cuts than he wanted. Republicans are urging him to veto the bill, saying it's full of gimmicks and was kept secret until hours before the vote.
So let me ask this question. Why can't the majority party share the language, in print for 48 hours, of course, that contains the rest of the budget plan? Because, by the way, we don't even have those. Several of them we haven't seen anything. Others we've seen some vestige of it, but we don't know what the final product will be.
Democratic leaders say their plan does include cuts, but they say taxes are needed to balance the budget.
I would ask you respectfully to tear up your pledges so we can have an honest conversation. Addition and subtraction. Doesn't mean you have to vote for any addition, but it means it's not preempted by a pledge you make to an unelected official in Washington, D.C.
Representative Leno was referring to an anti-tax pledge promoted by conservative activist Grover Norquist. The new state budget assumes voters will approve Governor Brown's proposed tax increase in November. A national push to find housing for young military veterans has run into some opposition in a San Diego neighborhood. The VA Medical Center wants to open the first transitional housing facility to help end homelessness among vets in San Diego. The proposed site in the Mission Hills Old Town neighborhood is directly across the street from a charter school on San Diego Avenue. This commercial building used to house the Thomas Jefferson Law School overlooking Interstate 5, and the Old Town Academy Charter School moved in last fall with its 218 students.
We have a lot of military families. We have a number that are serving in active duty combat roles.
Tom Donahue, the school's principal, says they support the military, but
we've had, experts, nurses, doctors, social workers say that, a brain injury, traumatic brain injury, and a post-traumatic stress syndrome treatment center is not such a good thing next to an elementary school.
So why do we need this facility in San Diego now?
Well, with the drawdown in Iraq and Afghanistan, we have even more veterans coming home. And we know what the services are that they require, and we are ready and able to serve them. We just need the space to serve them in.
Debbie Dominic with the VA San Diego healthcare system will be in charge of the center. She says they've never had any incidents involving children and veterans.
We have 107 facilities, domiciliary facilities throughout the nation, and we cohabitate very, very well in other communities with schools right across the street where we share fence lines.
San Diego is seeing an average of 130 troops a month return from the battlefield, and some end up homeless. The Department of Veterans Affairs has a goal to end homelessness among vets by 2015. Dominic says vets with a history of violent behavior won't be allowed in the 40-bed facility.
if they had a mental health diagnosis that would put them at jeopardy or anybody else, they wouldn't be there. They wouldn't be at that facility because we wouldn't be providing that type of care. That's handled here in La Jolla at this hospital.
The director of the VA says if the center doesn't open by September, the San Diego program will lose the $30 million Defense Department grant it won to operate the facility for 5 years. San Diego City Council will be the final arbiter in this neighborhood controversy. A final vote on whether to deny or approve the center is scheduled for June 26th.
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission will hold a public meeting in San Clemente on Monday, the first in a series of meetings to inform the public on progress being made at the San Onofre nuclear power plant. It still remains idle. Joining me to look at what's next is Adam Townsend. He's an editor with Patch.com in San Clemente. Thank you, Adam, for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So let's begin, first of all, with why it shut down in the first place. They found some tubes inside both steam generators. They had extreme wear. Do we know why the tubes were wearing?
Well, yeah, we know the direct cause of the tubes wearing, and the NRC and Edison officials have confirmed that the tubes, which there are thousands of them that transfer heat to boil water to make steam, were vibrating against each other and against support mechanisms within the steam generators, and that's what caused the small leak that caused the shutdown and the excessive wear in the other tubes.
Do we know why that happened, though?
That is a more difficult question, and that's what's taking inspectors and plant technicians so long to figure out.
So what do they hope to gain, the NRC, from these public hearings?
Well, there's obviously an intense amount of interest. The anti-nuclear movement has been growing, and the NRC wants, I think they want to be as public as possible. And this is something, they hold a routine public meeting every year about the plant, whether there are major problems or not. So I think they want to get out ahead of any criticisms and try to be as transparent as possible to about what they're doing at the plant.
So do you anticipate a lot of sort of anti-nuclear power groups, activists, to be at this meeting?
I anticipate that it's going to be packed to the gills, and there's going to be a lot of anti-nuclear power activists. After the Fukushima Daiichi accident last year, groups locally started really coalescing and to go against nuclear power, and the sediment has only grown since the leak at San Onofre in January. They're really well organized. There's 2 local groups, Residents Organized for a Safe Environment and San Clemente Green, who have been spearheaded the movement in Orange County. And also jumping into the fray has been Friends of the Earth, which is a national environmental group.
Now, with regard to power, one of the arguments, I think, in support of having this power plant is we need this power. It supplies, I think, 20% of our power here in San Diego. But there's been a response now from SDG&E, hasn't there, in terms of will we have rolling brownouts as a result of the shutdown?
Well, and they've done a couple things. They've completed just in time a Sunrise Power Link, which is a 117-mile power line that comes from the west that will help import power into San Diego area. They're also working in Huntington Beach. They're firing up a retired gas-powered power plant, and they're also really have started a big public outreach campaign to promote conservation. Also, in extreme circumstances, there are several big industrial customers that they pay a lower electricity rate in exchange for an obligation to cut their power if it looks like there's going to be blackouts. So there's a number of things going on.
So do you think activists might now have a stronger case, given concerns about what went wrong, given the fact that, hey, maybe we don't need this power locally, that they might be making a stronger case to say, shut this plant down permanently?
Well, obviously nobody wants to see a dangerous situation at any nuclear power plant, but if we're talking pure political strategy, this leak in January has been a godsend for the anti-nuclear movement. They've gathered a lot of support. It's actually because of this leak that Friends of the Earth has taken a larger role in the fight, the local activist fight against San Onofre, and I think there's a large contingent of people who aren't really passionate. They don't show up at the meetings, but they just kind of view the power plant as rickety and think it should be shut down. And I think that support among those people will be growing.
Well, Adam Townsend, thanks for being here. I know you'll be covering that meeting, and we'll have to follow your reporting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Patch will be there to cover it.
On July 1st, California will be the first in the nation to ban foie gras. the fatty liver of a duck or goose. It's being banned because of the way it's harvested. Some say the method is cruel to the animals. KPBS arts reporter Angela Carone says San Diego animal rights activists are declaring victory while chefs and foodies don't like it.
It's lunchtime on a Thursday, a busy day at Carnitas Snack Shack in North Park. Thursday is special. That's the day Chef Hannes Cavan serves foie gras.
There it is in all of its beautiful glory. That brings a tear to your eye, doesn't it?
Cavan's 6-month-old restaurant specializes in pork. It's named after his pet pig, Carnitas. Cavan's love of pork is almost primal. He assures us this diagram of meat cuts is accurate.
Very accurate.
But Cavan also loves foie gras. Most of the time he sears it, but he prepares it differently each week. On this day, he's made a foie gravy.
I want people to enjoy it. You know, if they're taking a risk to order it, I want them to go, wow, this tastes good, and hopefully open their, palate and their choice of cuisines.
Would people come to this area for foie gras?
Foie gras is a delicacy, and it's expensive, though not at Carnitas Snack Shack.
That's what's kind of ridiculous here. We sell for $8, which generally runs $18 to $25 on most menus.
Banning foie gras might not mean much to your average consumer who rarely eats such pricey fare. But the debate reminds us of something many of us deny on a regular basis. We don't like to think about where our food comes from, because often where it comes from isn't pretty.
People are allowed to eat food, you just can't torture it before you kill it. So that's really what it comes down to.
Brian Pease has been fighting to ban foie gras for 10 years. In 2002, he started what he calls the foie gras investigations. There are 2 main foie gras farms in the U.S. He went to both with a video camera.
I've just walked into these farms, and I've done it at night when managers aren't around to tell me to leave, but I've gone up to the workers and videotaped them force feeding.
The state ban prohibits the force feeding of ducks to enlarge their liver. As of now, this is the only way foie gras can be made. Here's how it works. Ducks roam on a farm for 12 weeks. Fattening the liver takes place in the last 2 to 3 weeks before slaughter. Ducks are moved to specific barns and kept in 4x6 pens. They are fed 2 to 3 times a day when a foot-long metal tube is inserted down the duck's gullet, injecting corn mash. The goal is to fatten the liver 6 to 10 times its normal size.
I've seen ducks that are having difficulty standing, walking, and breathing. Ducks that are on the verge of death from the force feeding.
Reports on conditions at the 2 farms vary. Ducks don't have a gag reflex. They often eat fish whole. As a result, some say insertion of the metal tube does not cause injury.
The real issue is the cumulative effect of the force feeding over time and just the massive quantities of food that are being pumped into these ducks.
Sonoma Artisan Foie Gras is the sole producer in California. Owner Guillermo Gonzalez told KPBS via email,
"Our farm is being forced to shut down at the end of June, and the most unfortunate fact is that science has not been given a chance to play a role in this debate, despite the promise of it from our political leadership. The larger impact, however, is that a powerful special interest group with an anti-meat mandate was able to impose its agenda on all of us through violent means and propaganda."
Bertrand owns 2 of San Diego's toniest restaurants, Mille Fleurs and Bertrand at Mr. A's, which boasts one of the best views in San Diego. Bertrand grew up on a foie gras farm in southwestern France, watching his grandmother handle the ducks.
And I was in there, with my grandma and with my dad when they were force feeding. I saw that a lot, and I never saw one of those sick animals that they represent, those disgusting pictures that have been passing around.
Bertrand's chef brings out some foie gras. This is just one duck's liver. As a result of the ban, sales of foie gras have shot up in recent weeks.
It's going to be an underground business, I guess. There'll be like, hey, do you have any foie gras there? I tell no one. Then it'll become extremely expensive. It'll be like drugs.
Come July 1st, the fine for selling or producing foie gras in California will be $1,000. For activists like Brian Pease, winning the ban is just the beginning.
We're going to be monitoring, we're going to be checking out. We know who is serving it still, and we're going to check to make sure that they're not serving it any longer.
He may have his work cut out for him. During the 2-year ban on foie gras in Chicago, some chefs served a $40 glass of wine to cover the cost of a free side of foie gras.
You can learn more about the upcoming ban on duck liver in California at kpbs.org. While you're there, tell us what you think.
Tonight in the public square, the latest on the race for San Diego Superior Court Judge, seat number 34. Take a look at the numbers. Gary Creep is in the lead, 201,238 votes. Garland Peed, 200,150 votes. And now there's just 4,000 provisional ballots left to be counted. Now this nail-biter of a race, Creep versus Peed, has generated a lot of viewer comments. Not just because of the names, but because of some of the comments Gary Creep made on Evening Edition earlier this week. Creep said he isn't convinced President Barack Obama is a U.S. citizen. His worldview is in part guided by the Bible, and he believes judges make law all the time. Now, Scott Marinoff writes, I stopped believing in invisible friends as a child, and I'm not what you'd call religious now. But after watching the interview with Bible-toting birther Gary Creep, I said, if this guy is elected, God help us all. Chris Brewster says, where was the media to discuss Mr. Creep's views before the election? How embarrassing for San Diego that this individual could become a judge. And Dan Jacobs writes, Gary Creep said, representing clients has nothing to do with handing out justice. Judges make law every day. Don't judges interpret law, not make it? Creep's Freudian slip is probably indicative of his judicial philosophy. Well, your thoughts? Send me an email, jferrian@kpbs.org, or you can drop us a line on Facebook or on our Twitter account.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great weekend.